Hello and welcome back to another episode of Life's Black Belts. I'm your host, Eric Alders, and it's my honor and privilege to be bringing you another guest for the show. Today's guest is Raana Zia. She's from a background in corporate finance. She was actually an executive and CFO for many, many years. But now she's actually a self-help author. She has most recently written the book, Your Hidden Light, A Personal Guide to Creating Your Desired Life. And as always, I like to talk to our guests on the show, not only about what they specialize in now, what their expertise may be in, but also we get to talk a little bit about where they came from, the journey through life that took them to where they are today, where they get their thoughts, their philosophy, and so on from. And I try to utilize my experience as a lifelong martial artist and school owner only as a parallel of how the journey through martial arts and towards black belt is very similar to the journey through life and all of the adversity we have to overcome, the perseverance that's needed, and the ability to constantly reinvent yourself and pursue excellence each and every day, even when you're not having your best day. But without any further ado, I'd like to get into our interview. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Raana Zia. How are you, ma'am?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to it as well. It's always a fun part of my day that I sneak in addition to, like we talk about a lot on the show, balance. You know, I have a twin 12-year-old girls. I own a business for 12 years and teach classes. And in the middle of that, I try to do my best at the podcast and just be able to put some really good positive content out there and to introduce the world to some very interesting people they may not have had a chance to meet just yet. So we got in touch with each other, and I know that one of the things that you wanted to talk about was your book, and it's a very interesting topic that you talk about, something I'm very interested in as well. But why don't we take a step back a little bit, because remember on our phone conversation there was a lot of information that you brought up that I found very interesting as well. So why don't we just take a step back? I think you're currently based in New Jersey. Let's go back to the beginning and give me a little bit of a history of where you grew up and where you're from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Massachusetts. I'm actually Indian by origin. So my parents immigrated to this country a long time ago in the 1960s. And I went to school in Connecticut, worked in Manhattan, and then lived in San Francisco for 12 years. And I would say my entire career has been, up until recently, in finance. So if I go back and think about, okay, the choices that I made, when I was in college, towards the end of, my 4 years there, where we had to decide, okay, what's next? We all have to go, I have to go out and get a job. From a cultural standpoint, the Indian background, the immigrant background, my parents being immigrants, it was sort of this, unwritten sort of expectation that you go be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. My brother went ahead and became an engineer. I knew I didn't want to do any of those things, but I never really spent time thinking about what it was I was supposed to do with my life. I just thought I needed to get a good job, get married, have kids, that's just what I thought. And
the basics.
The basics. And they're all great, all great basics. So I ended up just, kind of by default thinking, all right, I'm stronger in math. I want to move to New York. A lot of banks were recruiting. So I thought, okay, I'll go into banking and into finance. And that would seem acceptable, to my parents. So I started in banking and then quickly shifted over into corporate finance. And I would say my entire career, felt like almost my entire career, I was telling myself, well, I'm not going to stay in this for very long. I'm going to go into finance. I'm going to go work for a company. And when I'm in a company, then I'll figure out what I actually want to do within the company, but it's not going to be finance. And what happened for me actually is I stayed because I ended up going into the retail industry. And I realized I really loved the business. I mean, I could relate to it. I bought clothes, I liked fashion, and I enjoyed it. And what I realized that you can influence the business, all aspects of the business from the seat of finance. And for me, it wasn't necessarily a love of finance, but it was a love of the industry I was in, the business, being able to influence, being able to lead, and later on a real sense of just love for personal development, really in developing myself, as well as developing other leaders. So I ended up staying on this track, and I can honestly say, I feel very grateful because within the corporate world, I had the opportunity to work for great companies that actually cared about culture, cared about their people, cared about development and developing others. And I would say through that experience, I realized that I had a passion of just growing and developing myself. And it sort of gave me a sense of, wow, there's so much more, because we're adults doesn't mean we stop learning. I would say I got really serious about my own personal development when I reached a career milestone in my life, and I ended up becoming a CFO of a large retail organization. It was everything I wanted. And at that point, I got very serious about, okay, I achieved this in my life. What else can I achieve? And, I have the ability to go learn, read, and figure out what truly is my purpose, what is my passion, and why couldn't I just do something else that really, was something that was much more connected to my heart. So that was sort of my journey really quickly, which kind of led me eventually to leaving the finance realm and really focusing on this space of personal growth, personal development, and more specifically self-realization.
Well, I think it's a very nice and brief summary of a lot of information right there, and gives everyone a nice highlight of what we're going to get into right now. So I want to just rewind a little bit. If you can, I know you went into finance. Your parents, wanted you to be an engineer or a doctor. Is that something that was instilled in you from a very young age?
Yeah, and I would say that my parents never, blatantly came out and said, you must do this, this, and this. I would say within the culture, and, I talk to many people within my own culture, it's this, it's this somewhat of a joke, right? Like you're expected to be a doctor, lawyer, an engineer, which is understandable because there's a sense of coming to this country. These were very professional professions, essentially, in which you could do well, make a lot of money, and be successful. And so it was almost this unwritten thing. I mean, my father started his career in engineering. My brother, went into engineering. And I knew that wasn't an interest of mine, nor did I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. So it was interesting because I never thought at a young age, oh, I could do anything. Now, what is it that I really want to do? I didn't have that sense. And it wasn't up until my last year in college, when we were all out there trying to apply for jobs, that I had to actually make a decision of what it is that I was going to do. And, for me, I think I was location based. I really wanted to move to New York City. And I was also thinking in my head, what would be something that would make my parents proud, right? We want to make our parents, we want that approval. And to me, it was that combination of things that said, okay, what's an alternative? And, my parents were really supportive.
So what were your passions? You said you didn't really figure out what you wanted till college, growing up through your younger years, through high school. What were your passions or thoughts that you had as a younger woman?
Yeah, I don't think as a young person, I knew specifically what I wanted to do. I think there was an element I knew I wanted to be in a leadership position. I did have a sense as a little kid, like bossing people around. And so, for me, if I look back, I'm not surprised of sort of where my career eventually, kind of led me to in finance. Because there was that sense of wanting to lead, wanting to have a voice, wanting to be heard. And I would say as interests go, and as it relates to what I'm doing now, I would say as a young child, I did always question this idea of religion and how it divided people, where as a child in my heart, I knew that we all believe the same things. We all value the same things. And so I always had considered myself a very spiritual person and someone who felt very connected to something greater than myself. But I always questioned this sort of separation and how could we possibly be different, and why are there wars and fighting amongst groups all in this sort of name of religion? So that was something that always went in the back of my head. And I knew I did as a young child have an interest in it. And I think I had read a couple books just to prove out my own, thesis. people who wrote with the same sort of bias and tried to prove the similarities. And for myself, if I were to go back to school and say, okay, what was an interest that I didn't pursue? I think it would have been in that space of, philosophy and religion, because I think it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I was my brother and I as well, very philosophical as children. We grew up in a Reformed Jewish home. And I remember even very young going to temple and things like that, and just questioning everything and coming home and having very deep conversations. And I think it's important, no matter what your belief is, if you have that philosophical mind, to honor that as well. I was curious, you talked about bossing people around when you were younger. Were you the oldest sibling,
No, I wasn't. I was the youngest. I have a brother who's 2 years older than I
Okay.
am.
But you were the only girl in the house,
I was
aside
the
from the
only.
mom?
Yeah, I was the only girl in the house.
Do you think that maybe motivated you at all to want to have your voice heard a little bit more, to speak up, or to have a little more presence to be shown, or you don't think that really had anything to do with it?
Oh, yeah, of course. I love it. Now we're going deep, right? Like the therapy session. No, of course. I feel like that, having an older brother and the attention placed upon that in terms of, okay, the education for my brother, the sports, I was following. He did tennis and got attention for doing that. So I started playing tennis. Or, he skied and I started skiing. And so I was doing those things probably, because I wanted that same sort of to be out there in the spotlight as well, right? Being a woman. And again, I think it's a cultural thing, really, from the sort of Indian culture and the male, the dominance of the male, both in the religion of my family as well as just in the culture. And for me, just not wanting, not having that, like, here I am, I want to be seen as well.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons I brought it up, because I was curious, from the Indian American background, if that had an influence on you at all. As again, I'm not familiar with it, but you hear some other friends that I've had talk about that have brothers and sisters, that sometimes it's a little tougher for the female to have their attention shown. A lot of the attention's on the male. But not a therapy session. For me, what I love is when you answered that question, it starts the root of where all of your thinking and your motivation and all of your passion starts from, why you start on this path. And it seems to me that even just briefly, that moment created an opportunity for you to really dig in deep and try to get yourself out there. You had to look and become a little bit more creative to make sure that you were noticed and made people around you aware that what you had to do or say was just as valid and just as important. And I think that, there's many things that influence us as we get older, but I always find it very interesting when you look back, even for myself being philosophical, I look back as well at some of those different situations that helped to shape who I am today. I remember asking you on the phone as well. For me, I would love to live in a world where we could just be humans and having conversation with each other, and not have to always bring up the fact of what culture or background we come from, or race, creed, religions, and so on. But obviously, that's the world that we live in. I try to just judge people based on who you are. My dad raised me to say, if someone is a good person, if they are classy, it doesn't matter where they're from or what they look like. Every culture, every background has good people and bad people. If someone is good by you and treats you well, it's a good friend. Don't just judge a book by its cover. And that's, for me, what I wish the world would move to more often than seeing a color or a race or a creed first. But for you specifically, did you find being an Indian American play a larger role in your life at all? Or did you really not notice it whatsoever growing up?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm going to try to attempt to answer it because,
Okay.
For me, in some sense, I never felt different, right? And again, maybe there was a part of me that didn't feel different, but then there was also another part of me that felt very different. I think I've been fortunate in the sense that I always felt included in things growing up. I was never meant to feel different from people outside of myself. And that's not the case for many people I know, right, of my similar background. However, I've always felt there was a part of me that just felt different, right? And that I didn't fit in one particular group. And I thought probably all my life that it didn't really matter. But I sit here and, I think about it now. I think about it even, to this day, where there's parts of me that feel like, I don't really feel like I fit into any one particular group. And and I'm like that with my friends as well. I'll have one friend in this group, one friend in this group, one friend in another group. And I realize now that's okay. That's okay for me, because there's an element of just appreciating and not feeling stuck in just one way of being. There's a sense of freedom and being able to just kind of touch upon different people, different group, learning different things. And there's truly a part of me that feels like I'll miss out if I just get, sucked into one way of being or one group of people.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously that's what makes the world go around. And the more that you could surround yourself by different people, different cultures, different backgrounds, people that grew up even in different parts of the United States, it's a completely different way of looking at things, and just allows you, hopefully with an open mind, to appreciate that we're all different, but share similarities. And one of the philosophical things I've thought about as a child, and even to this day, is what would my life be like if I was born and raised in a different part of the world? You know what I mean? Same parents, but maybe I was born in California or India or who knows where, how much the society and the culture around me help to change and shape who we are. And we obviously don't have control over where we're born and where we grow up. It's just something that we have to deal with. But I think it's very interesting when you're a part of a different background and have an opportunity to meet some of the different people that are around you. That's what I try to do, at least in my life, is surround myself by a variety of people. I appreciate you answering that. It was just kind of a curiosity question I had, but I don't like to focus too much on, just culture specific. I just think it's a part of who we are, but not everything that we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just want to chime in too, because I think it's a good question. I mean, I think also it obviously has had an impact on my life, right? Because anything that you're sort of born into and everything that gets shaped really influences who you are, as an adult. And I would say too, what was very interesting too in my upbringing is that yes, we were Indian. Our family is Muslim. And so growing up, we went to a mosque, but the mosque was so multicultural because it was based on just all these early immigrants coming into the country. So it was, there were Indians, people from Pakistan, people from Turkey, people from Morocco, Saudi Arabia. It was just such a mix of different cultures. So it wasn't even at that point young in my life, associating having like just a community of, say, like Indians coming together. Yes, we had family, but it's also being exposed to, wow, we're all similar, and here are all these other people from different cultures and different backgrounds all coming together in this place of worship. And I've always felt very grateful, actually, to have had that experience, because I guess ultimately I feel like, I guess given my background and having that experience, it's just really sort of enjoying the variety, right, of humans out there, and realizing at the end of the day that no matter where you are in whatever part of the world you go to, you can really meet like-minded people. We are all the same, at the end of the day. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't matter where you come from, because you can go. And I've done this, like I've gone to workshops over in Thailand because I wanted to be exposed to people from that side of the world. And we're all coming together because we have similar interests, because we're at this workshop together. But just realizing how, like, the energy, how dynamic, and even though we're at opposite sides of the world, we want the same things, we have the same values. I mean, it's just so eye-opening to go ahead and do that and open your eyes up to what's out there. And you realize that you're one and the same.
Well, I would imagine too that it influenced you a little bit to fast forward a little bit to writing your book and getting involved with the spirituality and self help, because I think when you're reflecting on yourself, we also tend to look at the people that are around us and compare our lives with theirs, our thoughts and actions with theirs, and we try to place ourselves somewhere in that hierarchy of things, and we try to figure out as we're growing up who we are and who we want to be. And I think the more that you're exposed, like you were, to a variety of opinions and cultures and backgrounds, it helps you also to learn about yourself while you're learning about other people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say, reflecting like we're doing now, sort of reflecting on things that shape us, I think are very important. And I've also realized and appreciate a lot of the stuff that I talk about, even in my book, about going within and really understanding ourselves
Hmm.
and really understand, how we actually think. What are the thoughts? What are the beliefs? Where do they come from? Right? And how do they influence our behaviors? And I've learned so much about myself just through establishing a practice of mindfulness and meditation and going within on a regular basis. I feel like that's like the fast track to understanding yourself and growing yourself and getting from here to there, from where you want it, from where you are to where you want to go.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to get to that, but I want to cover just a little bit more first, because I find it very interesting, this path that you take, because I'm trying to figure out in this conversation how you go from a CFO executive in New York City to meditating and talking about self-help and philosophy. So that's an interesting
Yeah.
transition I want to get to. But you said from very early on that you had this desire for New York City. Why?
Oh, because you know what? I spent a semester abroad in Rome, and it was probably the best thing I ever did. And for me, when I came back, I just wanted to go to the city that was the most exciting city in the US that I would not get bored, right? And so I'm someone with a lot of energy, and I think back then I had a lot of energy. I was kind of the work hard, play hard type person. And so literally it was just, this sounds amazing. I want to go to this city. I won't be bored here. And I was absolutely location based in terms of, I'm going here. Now, what can I do here? And eventually we did move. When after I got married, I moved to San Francisco, but that was a location based decision. I knew I couldn't stay based on my husband's job in New York City anymore. And I told him, I said, the only other place I'd move is San Francisco. And we went there. And, for me, it was about just the diversity, the stimulation, and all of that I just wanted to experience.
Now, when you moved from New York to San Francisco, were you already established in your finance career or not yet?
No, it was still early on, but I was at the manager level at that time, so I had, I wasn't planning on switching out of finance when I moved to San Francisco. I was just finding the right job in the right industry that interested me.
Okay. And then you were there for a few years, and then did you then shift back to the East Coast where you are now,
Yeah,
or when did that
yeah. No,
happen?
I was there for 12 years. I had my
Oh,
children
wow.
out there. Yep, I didn't. I moved to New Jersey in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
So East Coast, West Coast, what were some of the big changes for you from growing up on one side and then spending 12 years on a completely different side of the country?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. I mean, San Francisco in itself is really beautiful. The challenges for us were that, we didn't have any family out there. However, I really wanted to experience being out in California, and Northern California is very different than Southern.
Of course.
Yeah, and I loved it. I mean, but I'll tell you, my heart was back in New York. And honestly, it was like a breakup. When I went out there, I wanted to go out there, but I was like, my heart was sad, for
Sure.
a good 2 years. And I knew that I would eventually come back here to the East Coast. So, you talk to anybody, their differences. They're both great, but culturally, they're both very different.
Of
And
course. Well, I mean,
yeah,
the thing about California, I think that people don't always, or I didn't really understand until I really started thinking about it, is that it's basically like the entire East Coast. Is New England area the exact same as South Carolina, New Jersey, New York, Washington? I mean, there's so many different states on our coast where when you're in California, it's almost the entire West Coast. I mean, so obviously from San Francisco to San Diego, there's so much in between and so many different parts to explore. I haven't had a chance to get out there as much as I'd like to. I only spent like 2 days on business, but everyone that I know that's out there, the philosophy, the kind of attitude of the people seems very attractive. But also, I have a lot of family out here as well, so that's what holds me.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question because one of the things I like to bring up and in this podcast is, again, not just the successes that people have and why we think the way that we think, but we all have these challenges through life and we have goals that we're trying to reach and we have missions that we're on. And then life happens, good things, bad things, and everything in between. And you try to figure out how to maintain your balance through it all. One of those big curveballs that comes in is children and marriage and things like that. Being a focused, energetic, career-oriented woman, how did having a family add to your life? Was it an opportunity for you to take a step back and figure out how to balance it all, pursuing, climbing the ladder in your career, but also maintaining the home life as well? I know that for me as a father of twin girls, my girls were born 4 months before my business opened. So my first 2 to 3 years, I felt like I didn't sleep at all because the kids weren't sleeping at home. And I really didn't have a lot of help here at the martial arts school, and trying to figure out how to balance my work life and my responsibilities as a father while my wife also worked, and my responsibilities to her and to each other were some of the struggles that I had to go through and try to figure out. And it's not like anyone really gives you a rule book to follow. You just kind of do the best that you can. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, no, I love this question because I even write a little bit about it in my book. You know, for me, having my first child was a catalyst for change in my life in a real positive way. Of course, right? You have your children. Now, you know, I was somebody who was working like 10 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours, working really, really hard, especially in finance. I think initially, especially being trained on the East Coast, you kind of have this sense of face time, like the harder you work, you know, the more people are going to value you. And I just had, you know, I was just doing that. And so by the time I had my first child, I realized like, okay, I'm not going to be the person who works, like comes home, takes care of my child, and then works till hours of the night to come back and go to work.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't what I wanted. And so I actually made a very clear decision that I wanted balance, and that I'm going to get what I'm going to get done in the time from whenever I'm at work, from 8 o'clock till 5:30, because I have to go get my child from daycare, you know, by 6. Then I'm going to do what I can do during that period of time. And that when I get home, I'm going to focus on my kids. And so it literally was a forced balance. But what's key is making a decision you believe in. And there was part of me that said, I don't see it around me. I didn't, you know, there was a lot of ambitious, you know, parents out there working. And all I would see is that they would go home, take care of their child, and get back on their computer and work till 11.
Mm-hmm.
And all I knew is I did not want to do that. So, you know, I think it's really important to get very clear on what it is you want. I didn't want to give up my career. I still was ambitious, but I wanted to do it my way. And I believe that there was a way I can do it that was that was less stressful on my terms and more fulfilling. And so that's what I did. And it's hard. You know, it was hard because you're just still worried. What are other people going to think about you? But, you know, I had to get over it. I would do what I needed to do, leave work at 5:30, and be okay with doing that, and then come back in the morning. And what I found for myself is that I became a lot more productive in the hours that I had at work. And I realized that a lot of energy that I had used to spend was actually wasted energy, right? Because I went inside and I could really feel the difference. Like, wow, yeah, I could stay here till 7 o'clock, but how much work would I get done? You know, because my thinking, you know, I'd only get 10 minutes worth of real work done, but I can get up early in the morning and get that 10 minutes done. So I learned about myself, and I learned how to manage and achieve what I wanted to achieve on my terms. And that starts with a decision that you believe in. And that's what it was like for me. Now, you're an entrepreneur. It's a different story for you. For me, I was already in the corporate environment, and it was just about balancing the expectations there, balancing the work there, on my term, right? Not giving up
Right.
standards, but figuring out a different way to do it.
Absolutely. Well, one of my struggles during the same time, I love everything you said there because I could completely relate to feeling the same way. And I think a lot of people listening could relate. I had a challenge. Maybe you could relate. I think it's a little bit of what you're talking about here. Um, Being so involved with a new business when it was coming up, my title in martial arts is master when you reach a certain level, whatever. So at school here at the martial arts school, everyone was calling, master alders. And because I had to put so much time into it, there were moments that I felt like I was losing my identity a little bit. I just felt like there was just this one guy I had to be all the time. I was always a mentor, role model, teacher, helping everybody. But when I came home, I had to learn how to turn that off and be daddy, or be Eric, husband of Tiffany, or be a son or a brother. So during that time, my brother sat me down and spoke to me and said, listen, we all have these roles that we play in our life. And when you're in the role that you're performing, be the best version of that you could possibly be. So when you're at the martial arts school, you give Master Alders 100% of that. But that's that one role in your life that you play. It's not everything of who you are, just a part of you. When you're home, you have to be 100% dedicated to your family, your children, and your home life. And for me, I don't know about everybody else, it was nice being able, even though I'm all the same person, to try to segment and understand that there's different roles that I have to play in my life. And sometimes these different roles demand a little bit more attention than the other. And if you put all of your attention in one spot, there's going to be other areas of your life that suffer. And it's just a constant quest of trying your best to balance all of these out as best as possible. And that's a little bit of what I got out of what you're saying and how I related to it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually love that, right? Because it makes it very, what you said makes it very clear in terms of how you shift your focus, right? And defining it, saying, right now, this is I'm master, or I'm at work, and I'm giving all my energy there. But then when I come home or I'm in front of my child, I have to switch. And I really feel like it's an incredible mental exercise. And I feel like I'm still practicing today. So while I'm working at home, like on my stuff on the computer, but I'm at home now, not in an office, my kids can walk in. And they're there, just sweet and innocent, wanting to show me something.
Mm-hmm.
And I can feel the old Raana, where I was just like, I'm in my work zone, in it. I also know that I'm not super productive. It's just a lot of spinning mental energy waiting to get an answer. But I'm holding it, like I'm mentally holding on to something, so I can't be present outside of it. And so when my child walks in, I look at it almost as a practice, saying, okay, you can totally push your child out of the room and sit here and spin for another 2 hours trying to get your answer, or you can just practice now being like, your child is here. Mm-hmm. Give your attention right now and practice doing that. And to me, it is a practice, because we've got to learn to sort of shut off our attachment to one thing, mm-hmm. because you don't have to be so attached right now, and shift to something else that actually you can add a lot more value to, right? And be able to shift from those different things. So I loved how you compartmentalized that in a bit, or defined it, to say, I'm this person here, I'm this person here, I'm this person here, and how do I balance it? Right. And I think it's a mental balance, right? It's all right in your mind.
Well, I think living in the present moment is something that is a huge part of my philosophy as well. I think I read about as little. Well, you have some influences from Eckhart Tolle as well, and I'm a big fan of his writings and living in the moment. But one other thing that I do, I'm just curious of your thoughts on this. Again, my older brother happens to be a very famous artist, and we do really good at helping to give advice to one another. Even though he's the older brother, he listens to me as well. But when we have these different I can't even say the word. When we have these different roles that we're playing in our life, another point that he brought up to me, which I thought was very helpful, is that sometimes let's call it the karate instructor, black belt in me, when approaching technique, teaching business, has a certain way and focus and discipline of looking at things. Sometimes Eric could get a little bit disoriented with all of the facts that are going on and has to try to understand it all. And or sometimes I have doubt and fear, just like anyone else does. And an interesting thing he said to me, I'd be curious of your thoughts on, is what would Master Alders say to Eric right now? Like if you, as the instructor, had to give this person advice on what he's going through, what would he have to say? Or vice versa, if Master Alders is missing out on some of the personalization and compassion that comes with Eric, the husband and the father, could that role, that personality that is in that side, can that also influence the other role that you play as a business owner? And I thought it was very interesting to not only be in the moment when you're in these certain categories of your life, but also understand how these different roles can also help each other. So maybe there's parts of the old Raana that's super focused and determined that can also be very helpful when you're in the role as a mother and helping your children accomplish certain tasks or activities, and vice versa. The role and compassion that you have as a mother can also then cross over to the business life as well. Is that something that you agree with, or no? I was just curious of your thoughts on that.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Your brother is so wise. It is. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing because it's like, I feel like I'm getting advice, but yeah, absolutely. Because look, we all have strengths. We know we do, right? And our strengths have gotten us to where we are. And I love, that idea of how does that one side of you lift up the other side of you when you're struggling? Because we all do. It's funny because now even in the stuff that I talk about in my work, my book right now, and I'll coach my husband on it when he needs it, right? And
I'm sure he loves that.
Actually,
right?
he does, because I would have never forced it on him. I actually never even wanted him to read the book because I didn't think he was the audience, but he did. He read it on his own, and it's just amazing, right? Mm-hmm. He's just he's grown so much. It's phenomenal. I can't even say that. Okay. It's great.
It's okay. We're both even and not pronouncing things properly. It's okay.
Yeah. So, he'll ask for advice and I'll give him coaching, and I know how I feel. Like, how you feel when you're coaching someone or you're training someone, you have this energy, you feel strong, mm-hmm. and you feel really confident in what you're saying. And then there are times where I've felt myself on the other end where I'm feeling unsure. We all have doubts. We all have worries. I know the harm in all of those things, but you kind of let yourself sort of fall in that place. And then my husband will be the one who's sort of coaching me or lifting me up, right? And he's almost the mirror of me. And so I think it's a fabulous reminder that you've given in terms of saying, all right, let's just remember that we have these amazing strengths in the different roles that we play in our life, but those strengths are strengths for a reason. And how do we tap into those other strengths and combine them, right? Mm-hmm. To make us even more, right. Maximize who we really are as humans. So.
Absolutely, because I think some people might feel completely successful at their job or in control in their position because it's known to them, and there's people that look up to them, and they have a role they play that they understand and they believe in. But then there might be other areas of their life that feel like they're absolutely falling apart. But there's this one very strong part of their life that they're very, very good at. And then if they learn how to cross them over, it could create a little bit more balance and help it out a little bit. That's kind of the point that I was bringing up. But you've made a great transition there about talking about your book, which is what I want to get into. So can you talk to me about the transition? It seems like it started a little bit in listening to you, like when you became a mother, you really wanted to make sure you maintained a balance here. Your career was starting to grow more and more. At what point do you switch over from the successful role you're playing at a top level, a CFO? That must have felt amazing to reach that high of a level, but you reach that high of a level, you're still not satisfied, and now you want to take a switch more into a spiritual self-help side. So can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So mine was an interesting journey. It was back in 2012. I was out in San Francisco. 2 years prior, in 2010, I had decided, look, what do I really want? I'm in this finance track. I can do the job of a CFO of an apparel retail company. I think I want that. And I want to move back to the East Coast because I want to be closer to my parents, closer to my family, my in-laws, etc. And it'll be better for our family. So I decided that was what I wanted to do. Now, what happened was in 2012, I got the opportunity that, satisfied all those things. And when that happened, it was literally like, it happened quite easily, and it happened much sooner than I would have anticipated. I didn't give myself a timeline. I didn't say this had to happen in 2 years. I thought it could happen in 5 years. It could happen in whatever, 7 years. But so when this actually happened to me and I got the job, it was almost, it shook me in a certain way. It was a catalyst. It was a positive catalyst, but it was also a catalyst for me to really think about, like, how did this actually happen? How did this happen? And in that time period, I really felt like there was something that I did. I felt like because I was relaxed about it, because I was clear about it, that there was something that I had done internally and energetically that drew this into my life. And so at that moment also, I started to think, wow, if I'm able to create something like this in my life, maybe I can create something very different, something that actually really fulfills me. And maybe it would look very different than what I had been doing for the last 20 years. So these were just thoughts that were going into my head. So when we moved to New Jersey, literally there was a feeling within my heart. There was something really tugging at me that was telling me that you need to be doing something else, go figure it out. And I had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what my next move would be after, being in finance. But I was really determined. So I started to read all these self-help books, and I started to work on myself, and I started to travel, go to workshops, go to whatever conferences, because I was really looking for inspiration. I was really looking for, what is my purpose? What should I be doing? And this was my own personal, process. And I would say that, about 3 years into this search, and, and I'm not a very patient person, so 3 years was, it was like frustrating. But it was weird. I started to, well, first of all, I was gathering all this really profound pieces of wisdom that I didn't know. Like, I was getting really sort of clear on, look, we as humans are much more powerful than I've ever been led to believe. And that, there's something really magical about how we think and our thoughts and our ability to create things in our life. And it's all this information that I didn't know growing up, that I, looking back on my life, really felt like it was very true for me. So I'm getting all this information. I'm starting to have this feeling like I want to write it all down. And then I started to get this really sense of this creative urge to write. And for me, that was completely strange, because I never felt like I was good at writing. I never had a desire to write a book. But here I was feeling an urge to write down everything that I believed was true in my life, that I felt like could be a reference guide for myself, for my children, and also people who are like me, similar to me, looking for, how do I achieve what I want to achieve in the most efficient way, that in a way that doesn't create more stress in my life. So, I know I spoke a little fast about this, but it was just this interesting process, and I say that when you're looking for your purpose and your passion in life, a lot of times people don't know what that is. And they think it should be one thing, but it could be something very different. And if you just open yourself up, sometimes the inspiration, and many times the inspiration that you might get back is going to be very different than what you thought it could be. And for me, sort of the first step in my new journey, in my new life, was to create a book and really get down what I believe is just what people need to know now, what I want my children to know now, to help them create a life that's really fulfilling and happy for them, and knowing how empowered they truly are.
So with that being said, what do people need to know? What do your children need to know? What do I and my children need to know?
Yeah. I would say, the key is really understanding that we're much more powerful as humans than we were led to believe, right? We live in a world that's energetic by nature. While there's we're all physical, there's also a very sort of unseen spiritual side of us, an energetic side of us that's connected to everyone and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's why, when people would say, or you would hear quotes around, oh, we're all connected, we're all one. Yeah, that sounded nice to me, but I didn't really kind of understand it. And for me, just understanding where everything is energy, we're all connected. And because everything is energy, that includes ourselves, it includes our thoughts, our feelings, and beliefs. And so the energy that we emit, every second of the day is the energy we attract. And that's how the universe works, right? And so what's fantastic is we have the ability to consciously manage our own internal energy. And energy is power, so that's powerful, right? And so that's the work. The real work, I believe, is going within and managing our own internal energy. And if you can line your energy up, right? Align up your thoughts, your feelings, and beliefs, and direct that energy to what you truly desire, and you hold that energy as often as you can, you attract that energy back into your life. So if you're thinking positively, you're feeling positive, it's aligned with your beliefs, it's aligned with your words, your actions, you create positive experiences. And it's just this energy exchange, right? It's creating your physical life out of, first, the spiritual side, the energetic side. Mm-hmm. So what the book actually does is it really just breaks it down. It breaks it down, first introducing this idea that our external world is created by our inner world, and that's why it's so important to go within first, to manage it on the inside before it gets created on the outside. And how do you manage your internal energy? Well, you got to first manage your mental energy, which is your thoughts, becoming aware. You can do that through meditation, right? And it's a practice, it's a discipline. And then it's also having awareness of your emotions, because that's your thoughts that you physically feel. It's energy, right? And so how do you manage your emotional energy? How do you use both your positive emotions and your negative emotions to benefit you? Mm-hmm. How do you manage your words, right? Which is, again, energy that's created as sound. And how do you become very, very aware of what you say and the importance of the words that you put out there energetically? Because
Absolutely.
that'll always impact you.
Well, I think one thing I try to pass on, not only to my children, but as a martial arts instructor, all of my students, young and old, from 3 to adult, I feel like everyone's uncle to a degree, and I take the role, the role of a role model and mentor, very seriously. I understand what I say and do can be taken, very seriously. However, one thing I do try to say to them often is that there's only one person you have control over in this world, and it's yourself. And I feel like a lot of people really try to spend a lot of their time changing everyone else around them when they really have, or blaming. Another thing to do is just to blame everyone else around them for their situations, problems, whatever it may be, when the only person we truly have any control over is us, our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, what you had just brought up. I can't necessarily control how you are speaking to me, but I can control how I respond to you. It's very easy to be polite and calm and say the right things when someone's being calm and nice to you. But if someone's getting very belligerent and nasty or condescending to you, to still be able to maintain a calmness and tone and to be level-headed, that's the real testament of character and the real challenge, I think, that's involved. And I think what you're talking about, at least I haven't had a chance to read your book yet, but to change anything around you really starts from within. And I know that sounds like a very cliche thing to say, but I truly believe everything that you're saying right there is so important for people to understand, that you have to start with you, one person at a time, how you react to those around you, to be the change that you're looking for. If you're upset that people are not using their manners as much or saying thank you, then you do it. If people aren't holding doors open, you be the one that holds open the door. But I think what happens, it's hard for people not to get cynical, because for people like myself and others that try to do the good thing or do the right thing as often as possible, sometimes when you don't get the acknowledgement or the pat on the back, or someone is nasty or rude to you, or it's not reciprocal, sometimes it makes you want to throw your hands up in the air and be like, why do I even bother? And for me, I anytime I have that thought, I just come back to, well, this is how I want to be, and this is how I want people to treat me. So all I really could do is continue just trying to maintain this philosophy and not let the negativity that surrounds us sometimes pull us down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, and I agree. And sometimes, like you said, these things sound like cliches, and they did all my life, until for me, the only way I could really understand that it was more than a cliche. It was more the reality of how things actually operate, right? And that's when, for me, it was a light bulb. and I could test it myself. It was the true understanding that whatever we're emitting, right, energetically, is what we're creating. And so, and that's what gets me through those challenging times, right? Because we can be in those situations where, you know, we couldn't be I couldn't be as centered as I wanted. I was more reactive because somebody was coming at me. And it's just this awareness, like, okay, you know, I just fed into it. I just created more of a negative situation. Whereas, you know, how do I stop it? How do I change? Because it's not going to stop until I change, right? Until I first calm down, get centered, and do it and take a different action. So I get it. I get how people can be really cynical about it and get really frustrated in it. And I think what keeps me in it is just a daily practice, you know, the daily practice, seeing the benefits and knowing that for me, this is actually true. It's what I give out is what I'm getting back, you know, and it doesn't mean that you can just sit around and be taken advantage of. That's not what it is at all. You know, it's not about being nice for the sake of being nice, but it's being centered so you could actually know what the right action is to take for the benefit of yourself and for others, right? It is about strength. It is about power. It's not about being walked over. It's about making the right decision from a place of power.
Absolutely. Well, I think that everything that you're talking about rings true inside my head as well. But what someone listening to this might wonder is, well, they don't know my situation. What I'm going through is different. It's something that's, you know, I hear it a lot here as well, that everyone thinks that they're the only one that's experienced what they experience. What I've learned throughout life is that when you actually don't keep things within, when you actually ask for help, or you speak to people, or if we move past casual conversation of, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm good. Really? Are you really good? You know what I mean? So that's a very common answer that people have. No one really stops and goes, well, let me tell you about my day, and just starts rattling off, you know? But when you actually could sit down with a friend and share what's going on, it gives you an opportunity to explore a little bit more, you know, the thoughts that you're going through, and realize that you maybe are not the only one. They'll share their experiences with you, and you realize you're not in this alone. But I'm curious, through your work as an author, I'm not sure if you're doing public speaking or doing different workshops with people. Have you noticed patterns at all? So people that are listening may have their own individual thing where they're stuck in their head thinking that, well, they're not going to cover what I'm going through, or her book's not going to help me. Are there certain patterns that you found, without specific situations, but patterns that people follow that you know that you could help them with? So if someone comes to you and has X problem, they have X feeling of being down on themselves, is there a step-by-step process of what you recommend to, all right, I want to make a change in my life for the better. Day one, do this. Day two, like, do you have you found a pattern that you could help maybe in a more generic way pass on to the audience?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the book, I talk about there's a 4-step process to conscious creation.
Okay.
And I believe this process you can apply to anything in your life. And the time, so the process is the same, but the time by which something manifests in your life will vary, right? It really just depends on what you're trying to create. But what I love about it, it was something that I had done initially to test if it really worked. Do we have the power to create by changing the way we think, or putting out an intention? So essentially the process is as simple as, you know, you wake up in the morning, you calm down, like you calm yourself, you get centered, right? Like you're going to meditate. So you have to take the time, right? And a lot of people I find will just be like, oh, that sounds great. I don't have the time. If you don't have the time, you're not going to make a change. So you can take 5 minutes. You sit down, you know, you get centered, you get in a meditative posture, and then you calm your mind and you set an intention for your day, right? But make an intention of something that you truly believe in. You know, don't say something that is completely outlandish that you know that you don't believe in. And a way to test that is to ask yourself, is there any doubt that this could actually happen for me? And so I would just say, you know what, today I want to have a very productive day. Now, that sounds simple, but I'll tell you, not every single day is productive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I consciously would say, I want a productive day. And then I would just feel it, and then I would let it go. let it go, I would meditate in the morning. So then I would actually just go into a meditation, and then I would go out into my workday and see what would happen. And what I would find is that I'd have the most productive day. Okay, so I'm like, there's something to this. And I would try it before, say, if you're going out, to dinner with some friends and you're not quite sure how things are to work out. Like, is everyone going to get along? You can do the same thing. It could take 20 seconds, whatever. And you can have an intention. I hope we have a really great time tonight, right? And everybody gets along. And then you just let it go. And then you go in and you go into your evening. And you could do it on multiple things, but the whole point of this is to really see the power of your own thoughts. By focusing your thoughts on something positive, you're able to create that. And if you're able to do it on small things, then you can start to build up the mental discipline on doing it on things that might take longer to change, right? Whether it is, changing your career like I'm doing, or anything that you want in your life. So what this really does is it brings you into yourself. It tells you to stop. Stop for a moment, relax, put a thought out into the universe, a focused thought, and see what happens. Mm-hmm. So that's what I recommend because, like you said, everything, everybody's lives are personal, right? Everybody has their own path. Everyone has their own life. And I don't believe, it's hard for me to talk specifically to tell somebody, okay, this is what you need to think. This is how you need to do it, because I don't know what's running around in people's minds, but I know people's minds are running, right? Mm-hmm. And so my recommendation is you quiet it, put one thought out there and see what happens for you, because you only learn through your own experiences. It's the only way you're going to stick with a practice or follow a methodology, is because you're going to see the benefit.
So breaking down the 4-step process, step 1, creating your intention. I'm not sure if I missed the rest of that.
I went really fast because
that's okay. I just want to, and I want people to read your book, but if you could highlight it and maybe at least give them enough of a preview that leaves enough interest open that they want to go deeper into your philosophy in your book. If you could quickly just run down those 4 steps, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. So the first step, like you said, is create an intention. It's a conscious thought. And a conscious thought is a thought that you already believe in. So if you don't believe in what you're intending, then you're not past step 1, okay? And I just want to give a quick example. For example, I had an intention, a desire to write a book. Did I believe I could do it? No. Then I had to work 1.5 years on step 1. To build the belief. And once I finally had the belief, I can move on to step 2, right? But do I believe I can have a productive day? Yeah, I've had them before. I can move past step 1. Step 2 is gratitude. Okay, gratitude is a positive feeling in your body. It gets you in a really, really good space. It gets you at a high vibration. Mm-hmm. I talk about energy in my book, how everything is energy, everything is vibration. The higher your vibration, the easier it is to manifest positive things in your life. So take a moment, feel gratitude, just feel it, And so that can take just a second. Mm-hmm. Step 3 is detachment, and we can probably spend a whole day talking about detachment, but detachment is just mentally detaching from your desire, from your intention. Don't walk out of the room going, oh my God, I really, really, really hope I have a great day. I really, really hope my day is productive. Oh my God, am I going to have a productive day? Like holding on to just you have to just let it go. Go into your work day and do what you do, do your work. So you have to detach, right? Because detach is a bit of trust. It's a trust that I put it out there and the right things are going to come into my life to help me achieve what I want to achieve. And then finally, step 4 is action, right? And action is when you're taking your physical action. So in this 4-step process, right, 1, 2, and 3 are all internal. So you got to line yourself up internally, and then you get up. Now you got to get up and go to work. I had to get up and go to work if I wanted to have a productive day. Right. And some things may not appear to have a lot of action because it may not be, okay, I got to do this. Some things, but some things are going to be action. Right. So for me with the book, I had to write it. Right. I had to write it. I had to publish it, etc. But the whole point of just kind of clarifying this process is the most important piece to do first is to get very clear on what you want, feel good about it, believe that it's yours, relax, release, and then take any sort of steps from there, from that place of that relaxed, centered place. So that's the 4-step process.
I love that breakdown. And the intention, gratitude, something I try to focus on a lot in life, and anytime I'm giving advice to my kids or my students, it's something I bring up a lot, because we do tend to focus on the negative of what's happening to us. But there's always things to be grateful for, and a lot of people are like, oh no, my life's horrible. And I feel like in extreme moments, it's very easy to see how simple it is to find gratitude, and the more you exercise that muscle, the more things you find to be grateful for. And I'll just give you an example for myself personally. I'm 3 or almost 4 months out of ACL meniscus surgery on my knee. Obviously, is emotionally a huge blow for someone that's so active as I am, training in martial arts all the time. But I do recall that first 2 weeks post-surgery, how much pain I was in. And I remember just standing up, on crutches to go to the bathroom. I was just in so much pain, saying to myself, I just wish I could stand up without, being in pain just one day. And I remember as that pain started to fade, just being so thankful for being able to stand and not be in pain, or to be able to take a shower when finally the bandages came off. And how many times do you go through your day standing, sitting, going to the bathroom, having a drink, seeing, hearing, all the things that we do on the daily, that if one of those things were injured, in pain, or unfortunately, if you lost that, how much you'd appreciate just those simple things. And I started thinking to myself, man, if I could wake up each day and I could perform my basic functions in life without being in pain, I'm having an amazing day.
Yeah.
It's an amazing day, and everything after that is honestly icing on the cake. And sometimes I reflect that way a lot at a funeral, when you're seeing all your family and friends around, and you all look at each other like, man, why did it take something like this to bring us all together? And you might have been stressing that day before this person passed about what your husband or wife said to you, or some drama at work, or whatever nonsense that life throws at us. And you get a smack in the face, and you realize what really is important in this world. So I think your number 2 is one that is huge. Gratitude, I think, can change someone's life. Not obsessing, the detachment, I think that's huge. And the hardest thing for everyone, your number 4, action. The parallel I'll give that real quick just on martial arts is people, and probably for you as well, they see the author, they see the work done, they see a successful CFO, they see a successful mom, and maybe there's someone at the beginning of that looks at you and goes, oh, I can never achieve that, or I could never achieve that high level of skill as a black belt. And it takes the action of just showing up and starting and just taking it one day at a time. And the longer you pursue that goal, you're bound to get better at it. And it really just takes that very first step. And it's the hardest thing. But when you do take the action, you create momentum, and the momentum is easier to keep moving. It's just, you got to get up and really, I think the part you talked about, those first 3 things, really to get your mindset in the right spot, I think will really aid making that action a little bit easier. So I really like that breakdown that you had there.
Thank you. Yeah, it is. And look, we all get it, right? We all have challenges in your life and in our lives. And, I love the comment you made on gratitude, because gratitude, I even look at it as a tool. It's a strategy, right? Because I do believe that, the more you put out that sense of gratitude and appreciation, you attract more of that into your life. And, the transition that happened for me from CFO to author, I felt like I manifested me getting laid off from my job. The company restructured, and I walked in one day and I was told I no longer had a job. Now, there was part of me that was like, oh my God, I can't believe I created this, because, look, I got severance and I got some time. And I thought this was my opportunity to actually spend time to do my book. Now, there was another part of me that was terrified. This had never happened to me before. I support, I'm a huge contributor to our family, in terms of income, etc. So there was a part of me that was completely terrified, and all those feelings you go through when you lose your job. And, given the material I was writing in my book, I knew all of being in that state of complete fear would actually create what I was fearing. And I didn't want that. But it's not easy, right? When your mind is totally put in those sort of dark places to pull yourself out. And what I found that really, really helped me was to not focus on what I was going to potentially lose, right? Because that's what happens. Like, what am I going to lose? I just lost my job. What else am I going to lose?
Right.
And I said, okay, that's not real. You haven't lost anything, really. You still have everything. So don't focus on what you're going to lose. Why don't you focus on what you have? So I would do the mental list and go out when I'm walking my dog every day and just go through, what am I grateful for? What am I grateful for? And all of a sudden, when you feel that sense of gratitude, there's no room for fear. There's no room for fear. And I could be productive and I could be focused on what I needed to do. It's just taking that energy and shifting it. So gratitude is really powerful. And like you said, sometimes it takes those, really sort of unexpected, challenging times for you to get, whether it's getting sick or having surgery or what have you, that you realize, like, wow, I have so much. And so every day, I'm grateful that I actually have my health, because if you have your health, you have the ability to do anything you want to do. So I just wanted to comment, the gratitude is a powerful, powerful strategy. That if anyone just tries it, just spend 1 week waking up and listing out everything you're grateful for, and just see what happens to your day, what happens to your life. Is gratitude a tool that works for you? And, guarantee you're going to feel a lot better, and your days are going to be a lot brighter if you just put that energy out into the universe.
Yeah, well, usually the challenges or problems that we're going through, and maybe it was Eckhart Tolle that brought it up, and I can't quote him exactly because I don't have it in front of me, but it was basically something along the lines that it's not necessarily the problems or challenges we're going through that's the issue. It's our thoughts about the problem. So you have life, and life happens, and you don't always have control over those things, but you do have control on how you think about it and how you approach it. And I think, again, if you have gratitude as the top of the list, then how you handle the situation feels a lot different.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It helps you get through it. It definitely. Yeah, everything is in the mind. That's what I believe. And I also, one of my personal beliefs is that, the more challenging the situation, the greater the opportunity on the other end of it, because I do believe that opposites are energetically linked, and you can achieve either spectrum by just focusing your thoughts. So if you're going through a hard time, and I've gone through them in my life, that, it just was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. But it's my own belief system around that was able to get me out, because I looked at it, and you still feel the suffering associated with it. But for me, it was okay, I need to get through these feelings, because you know what? I better get something really big on the other end of this. And when you focus your thoughts there, you're able to reach that.
Right.
So, you were talking about students, looking at, say, you around like, oh, how am I going to be able to do that? Right. Well, the other piece of that is you have to want it, right? Your desire has to be stronger than your fears about it, the fear of failure. And so a lot of times you can't get past step one until you really build it up within yourself. You build the belief, the faith, the desire. And that's only then will you be able to get step past step one. And sometimes, you made a good point. Sometimes you got to take that action to build the belief, right? You got to show up every single day, because when you do that, you start to build the belief, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting better. Oh, I can do this.
Right. Well, I mean, what do you think is it about people that so naturally doubt themselves and are so cynical and are always looking for the negative? Why isn't it the opposite? Why are we not naturally grateful and then hopeful and optimistic? What in any of your research or studies or speaking with people, why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I can only just give my opinion about that. I think it's just we've been conditioned, right? We've been conditioned just through growing up, what we see portrayed in media, standards that are really just really high and unrealistic. That makes us feel like that's perfection, that's success. I'm less than. As a woman, it's been, people talk about it all the time about how these images get put out there that make women feel like they're less than, right? They're not pretty enough. They're not smart enough. And all of those things just go into our subconscious minds that really, they don't serve us. And that's why work like this, right? What, work of going within yourself. It's about healing yourself. It's about uplifting yourself. It's really about bringing out your own light, your own who you really are, because we've just been conditioned for so long, and this is generational. You kind of come into this, into this place sort of with the conditioning of your parents, right? It gets passed down. So that's why, again, I believe our work is around going within and pulling out who we truly are. We all have to do that.
Absolutely. I think that you've brought up so many solid points, but at the same time, I bet we haven't even scratched the surface. But I would imagine that through your book, or let me ask, do you have any public appearances or workshops that people can get involved with to learn a little bit more about the lessons that you're teaching?
Yeah. So people can go onto my website, which is yourhiddenlight.com. It's the title of the book, Your Hidden Light. And I've done some public appearances. I don't have anything happening immediately because I am working on a workshop and program for leaders. Because I do believe that, the leaders, especially from where I've come from in the corporate world initially, the power of self-realization and bringing that gift back to our leaders, because if our leaders become more self-aware and more present, you influence more people. So, like I said, please visit my website. You can learn more about the book there. I've written several blogs. I have a lot of resources of books that have influenced me in my life. And, TBD, which is hopefully coming soon, I'll be having workshops and programs on the website as well.
Great. And then the book is the best place to find that on Amazon, or is the best to go to your website?
Yeah, you can go straight to Amazon, Your Hidden Light, or you can access Amazon through my website.
Perfect. And how about if anyone wants to follow your book, or if you're on social media personally, what are the best links that you could provide for them? And of course, I'll include this in the show notes as well, but for a brief moment, you could mention those.
Yeah. On Instagram, it's just my name. So it's Raana Zia. On Facebook, it's Your Hidden Light. And Twitter, it's at Raana Z. So they're all different.
It's okay.
I decided to make it complicated for everybody.
But going to yourhiddenlight.com is the way that could be the hub to access everything else.
Yes. You can, the links are right there.
Perfect. And when did the book come out?
It came out November, so almost a year, November of last year.
So what has the experience been like since it's released for you, the feedback you're getting from strangers, family, and so on?
Yeah. No, it's been amazing. I'll be honest with you. I was very nervous. I was very scared, right? You're putting yourself out there. I've never done this before. But I've been, I feel very grateful because, people really love the book. When the book first came out, it became part of a course on happiness at Suffolk University in Boston, which was really unexpected, but I was super excited because I had the opportunity to go in and talk to a bunch of graduate students, right? So our future leaders, and be able to bring these concepts to them, which were very new concepts. And so, I've had the opportunity to tour around, do a lot of shows like this, go on book signings and speaking engagements. And I'll tell you, it's been extremely fulfilling, because it's really, really fun to talk about stuff that you're passionate about, because I'm sure you know that.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah. And it's been a great learning, because talk about the last 20 years of my life in corporate finance. And here I am having to learn what it's like to write a book, promote a book, go out and speak about your book, etc. And it's a whole new business, it's a whole new world. And for me, I find that really exciting to be learning something from grounds up again.
Absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people are excited and inspired by that, but there's also a lot of people that would be very afraid of something new they don't understand, and that's normal. But it's also nice to have all these different experiences we bring on the show of people that have made these changes and have made a change of course in their life. And now you have a chance to look back and reflect at your initial fears. And I think that becomes, again, it's a muscle you're exercising of learning how to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that's when we really find out who we are and find out the best that's out there. I think as soon as you become complacent and settle and think you know it all, is the day you begin to die. So you have to constantly continue to grow and learn and evolve and be okay with failing and be okay with making mistakes. It's a part of the process. I think when you're in the situations, instead of asking why me, maybe just ask, what's my lesson here? And maybe you'll get a better answer than wondering, why you're going through it in the first place, Is there anything as we come to an end here that we didn't cover or that you'd like to leave the audience with? Any last bits of advice or anything else that you'd like to say that you would like the audience to know?
Yeah, I think I would just want to reiterate, the power and say the work that you're doing, the work that many people are doing in different forms. And it all goes back to going within ourselves, right? And it's the idea of starting from within ourselves, understanding who we are, how we think, why we feel certain ways, becoming more present, because there's a lot of power there. And I didn't really connect the two for most of my life. And now that I have, I find that life becomes a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, a lot more gratifying to realize that we are so connected to our external reality. Go within, create it within, and really hold on to that. Don't doubt yourself. Don't let negative thoughts come in and attack it. Stay really firm and strong to what you want on the inside. And then you'll be amazed at what you can create on the outside. So I just want to leave your audience with that.
Beautifully said. I love it. Well, I also appreciate you taking out the time from your day to speak with me and to share a little bit of your story. I know you probably get asked a lot just about your book and whatnot, but I do love to go a little bit deeper and understand a little bit more about, in your case, who Raana is, where your start was, how you started, how you've developed the philosophy and thoughts, the challenges you've faced in your life. And I think you did a really nice job in an hour here highlighting for everyone a little bit more about you. So maybe some fans of yours that are reading the book and they want to learn a little bit more about you, maybe this interview will help them get to be a little bit more personal with you and understand who you are and why you do what you do. And I think it's awesome to meet another person that's out there that's not just sitting back and complaining about how negative things are, but doing your best to contribute it to a more positive world and with a very beautiful goal of just trying to really help people that are around you, trying to find the best versions of themselves. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this opportunity with us.
Well, thank you so much. It was really fun. I loved the time that we spent together. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to, getting this episode out there for everyone to watch and to listen. And as things continue to develop and grow in your life and future, maybe it'll be an opportunity to have you back on the show or, maybe we'll be on tour one day doing some public speaking together. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
I'd be happy to. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank once again Raana for coming onto our show. Today's Life's Black Belt, Miss Raana Zia. Thank you so much for coming on the show.